Hey everybody. As content creators, we know the value in repurposing our content. I'm sure you're probably using shorts to help promote your podcast or your YouTube channel. But is that all that you're doing? Are you wasting all of the other value that's just sitting there in your archive, collecting digital dust until you need to pull it out as a rerun because you ran out of time this week to put something new together to release? Today, we'll be talking about repurposing our content and sharing tips and tricks along with some strategy and tools we're using. We'll also be answering your questions. But first, let's take a minute to introduce ourselves in case you're new to the channel. Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm a content creator, podcast editor, and AI consultant. I've been working with podcasters for years on how to improve their audio, but recently changed gears to get into the content creation space to just share what I've learned along the way. And next to me, whichever direction, is this guy who's back from his Australian trip. I forget, who are you again?
Fair enough. It has been a month. I am Matthew Bliss. I am a podcast producer, editor, soon to be coach, and world traveler from Australia. And yeah, I did go visit for a month to see family and get my affairs in order. Not because I'll be departing from the mortal realm, but because when you live in two separate countries, it kind of becomes a big deal when you have to pay taxes and do tax returns and refinance mortgages and things like that. But I also got to catch up with friends and people we haven't seen for 2 years. So yeah, it was a good time. But good to be back. Good to be back on the streams. I know you've been a bit lonely, Jesse, for the last month. So yeah, it'd be good to get stuck into content repurposing and AI and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so let's talk about content repurposing. It seems
Let's do
like
it.
for many content creators, it's a just something on the to-do list that we check off. We don't put a whole lot of effort into it, and there's so many options available to us like Castmagic, Riverside, Descript, Opus Clip. There's a ton of tools out there to help, but are we doing the best we can? Are we, since we look at it as just a to-do that we need to do we maybe want to spend some time rethinking it and make sure we're getting the most out of what we're creating? Are we getting the most when we just throw a podcast episode, live stream, whatever, into Opus Clip or into Descript and tell it, find me clips I can put onto social media and that I can upload to YouTube Shorts? Is that the best we can do? I'm not sure what your experience is with repurposing content, so I want to start with where you are in that.
Yeah. Well, I this is going to be a funny conversation because I am not a huge fan of the social media side of things, or at least historically, I haven't been. Uh, Mostly for a completely different reason, because I understand what the attention economy is, what doom scrolling is, how dopamine and all that, and trying to get sucked into scrolling on all these social media platforms. And so when I interact with it, usually I don't think about that being the place where I spend a lot of time. And repurposing content, social media is usually where it ends up, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. Uh, but I don't just make choices for myself. I also make choices for my clients, and sometimes they want content repurposed, in which case, usually what I do for them is take an episode transcript that I generate in a tool, and then take that transcript to, well, previously used Castmagic to do that. Terrible. Have since used ChatGPT and prompted things myself and found a few ways to kind of finagle the little things I want out of it. Some clients want a lot of stuff. Some want very little. Probably the ideal case that I could talk about here is a client I have from Australia, funnily enough, Kerry Atherton, Stories of Hope. You can check out her stuff. But she has conversations with people about mental health and addiction, those kinds of things. And so when she wants a few reels to post on social media around the time of the podcast episode release. So the selection of content for her is really important because it should characterize what the show is about and give a bit of value for the person who's watching on, because that subject matter is a little bit different than most entertainment-based podcasts. It's talking about very sensitive and personal subjects. So you want to make sure it's good and decent. And so the content repurposing there is extremely finessed and important. But in terms of creating that repurposed stuff, whatever ChatGPT spits out tends to be what I use. It'll be an extraction from the transcript, give me 3 impactful clips that talk about hope, and I'll use DaVinci Resolve and extract those clips myself to then create the social reels. So a lot of my repurposing is still in the very fundamental stage for my clients. I intend to explore it a bit for myself. Recently launched a new podcast, Rethinking Podcasting, and I intend to do a bit of playing around with repurposing for that too. But for me, very foundational, very fundamental approach to it. Whereas I think you'd probably have a bit more experience, Jesse, with going full bore into the AI side and seeing how much it can do and automate for you. Would that be right?
That would be. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But what do you find your clients are mostly doing in terms of content repurposing? What I see is show notes and shorts. Do you have people who are doing anything beyond that?
Well, that's why I mentioned Stories of Hope. I didn't actually say before, I do reels, and I also have the ChatGPT generate a Facebook post for each reel. So they literally just copy and paste it. I do generate show notes. I sometimes get inspirations for titles and thumbnails for YouTube as well. But all of it is just preliminary. It's all a draft, and I will put my human touch, my human edge, my expert inner marketer on it, just to make sure it's saying the right things that I want it to say, and that it's capturing the voice or the persona that they want captured for their podcast. There's nothing really there's nothing in the weird place that I would think for repurposing. Nothing particularly unusual that people wouldn't have seen before, I don't think.
Okay, so just the basics, show notes, social media, reels. And you hit on something that's really important. And I see so many people online talk about how great this tool is or this tool is. And it's so important that we're reading what these tools create. And we're going through and not just using it as is. Because anyone who's spent any amount of time trying to wrestle any sort of LLM to get it to write something that sounds human, that doesn't sound like it was written in the 90s by a marketer. We've struggled with discover your voice, leverage this. We're pulling back the curtain on this. All of these different cliches that if we're not aware of them, if we're not reading what's being written and not using these tools and starting to really pick up on these overused cliches, we're just going to be putting out AI slop. People tune out AI slop as soon as they start reading those types of cliches. Well, this was written by AI. I'm not going to put any time into reading the rest of it. For stuff like show notes, that's probably fine, because people are there because they're looking for a specific piece of information. They're not reading it to learn something. They're not reading it for any, maybe other people go and read all of the show notes for every episode. I don't see the value in that unless I'm looking for a link or something very specific that was mentioned in a show. What about you?
Definitely. Definitely. In fact, I'm playing around with very truncated show notes for my own podcast at the moment. Very little there. Links, a quick summary, or if I've scripted something as an intro, I'll copy paste that. But that's about it. I'll go to the show notes sometimes if I want to get a quick summary before I download the episode to make sure I want to listen. But otherwise, yeah, you're probably right there.
And I think that AI does make things so much easier. That's low value content that we really don't need to be spending a ton of time on. But anything that is meant to build awareness, anything that's meant to build our reputation, our brand, our reach, we need to be putting a lot more effort into that to make sure it sounds like us, that it's just not coming off as AI slop. And that's the biggest thing I see. So many people just want to drop it into the AI, drop their episode, their live stream, their YouTube video, magically get all of this stuff you can use as is just to save time. And we're getting so bombarded with this low quality content just across the board. It's everywhere these days. And the more you work in that space, you start seeing all of the telltale signs. I know we talk about it all the time, but you go onto LinkedIn, you see all of the posts with all of the emojis, and it's formatted a very specific way, and you pay attention. It gets no engagement because we know you. We know you're not an emoji person. So why is your post filled with emojis? And it's not really saying anything. That's one of the big things about AI. It uses a lot of words to sound like it's smart. But if you really read and pay attention, a lot of it is very basic writing that doesn't really say anything. It's like talking to some collegiate people who think they're the smartest people ever, who use all of these long words and string them together and talk for 18 minutes, and you realize they haven't really said anything, but they sounded really smart doing it.
Yeah, just the fully integrated Dunning-Kruger effect for AI understanding. But there's a rhythm too, I notice when I read things. Like I start to see a pattern in the rhythms and the structure, not just the words, the thing that belies the words in how it puts the information across. And there's one in particular that I can't quite describe, but that I see a lot. But I think whatever's happened, this self-perpetuating AI slop machine has started slopping out single sentence lines that slowly progress to an inflection point, which is about, it's not about this, it's about that. So let's turn that around. Like that kind of rhythm shows itself too. And because as humans, we're pattern matchers, we are finely tuned, even if we don't realize we're doing it, to pick up when it's AI. We may not even realize that we've picked up or what we've picked up to recognize what the slop is. But as soon as you said LinkedIn, with me spending as much time as I am at the moment on it, it's just everywhere. You can't avoid it. And maybe the solution there is for people to declare their AI marketing team. Maybe they get Robert the AI agent as the author for their LinkedIn profiles so that there's some sort of dismissal of the content. But people want the authenticity to say that they wrote this, that it's about them. And I think those two things would be at odds for them to be able to, for us to avoid the slop and also have it affect their reputation. I don't know. It's all strategy, isn't it?
It is. And with AI, it needs something from us to be able to be personal. it doesn't know us, it doesn't know our history. So we need to be able to give it some of that. And that's where a lot of these other tools, the Castmagics, the Riverside co-creator, Descripts Underlord, that's where they start to really show their weaknesses, because they don't have the ability to feed all of your content into it, so it can pull up very specific quotes, not just from the episode you're working in, but from previous ones. So when you're trying to create, say you're using ChatGPT to write something for LinkedIn, yeah, you can pull straight from the transcript. That's great, but that's one snapshot. Usually with LinkedIn, you're trying to build your thought leadership or your authority. It helps to be able to pull quotes, anecdotes, whatever, from your archives to be able to make things more personable, more relatable. And that's where ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, when you're using them on their own, provides so much more value. If you're going to pay $20 a month for something to help you repurpose your content, using ChatGPT is going to be a much better use of that money, in my mind, than paying Castmagic, where you pay for the amount of minutes you upload and you get, what, maybe 5-10 hours of uploads each month, and you don't have a whole lot of flexibility. You can't, like using ChatGPT, I think you can do it with that. I know you can do it with Claude, but you can upload all of your transcripts into, say, Google Drive or a Google Sheet and tie that into a conversation so ChatGPT or Claude can access all of those files, basically creating a mini knowledge base of all of your content. That's going to allow you to create not just better content overall, it's going to help it understand your voice better. It's going to help it be able to pull some of your experiences out. And more importantly, it's going to make it easier for you to not just look at your content as one and done. You can go back and find, hey, this topic is in the news. People are talking about this. Which episode did I talk about this on? You can go back, easily find it, easily find the clips, quotes, whatever, to post again on social media. The stuff we repurpose doesn't need to be one and done. We create it, we post it to promote our show for the week, never to be seen again.
Yeah. And it's really interesting when you said using content across your entire, I guess, reference material for your brand. I thought it was really interesting that any kind of show notes or social post around a podcast episode or a YouTube video that's gone out probably doesn't reference anything from previous material. It just works from whatever is in that episode and whatever it may or may not be able to infer from previous work you've done, depending on how you attack it. But I thought of a really great metaphor for Castmagic as you were explaining it there. Castmagic in LLM content repurposing and generation is like going to like a fast food place, and they have a very small menu. You can only pick from a couple of things. You want the burger, comes with the lot, everything on it, and as soon as you get that burger, you're sitting at your table picking off the lettuce, picking off the tomato, picking out the pickles, and you're left with what you actually wanted. And that's what those solutions purport to do for you. They presume that the burger that they create is the thing that you want and that you'll want to use. But if you're doing all the right things, you have to do the work to, extract what you don't want to make it your brand voice. Whereas doing something basic like working it in ChatGPT and doing a bit more of that manual work, you're going to Subway and you're asking for the things you want on your sandwich. And then you only get what you want, but you've built it from the ground up instead of paying for a burger with the lot and then taking off what you don't need. Castmagic sucks.
And
at the moment anyway. It might improve, but we'll see.
And we're not just picking on Castmagic. It's all of those kind of basic LLM front ends that they sell to you or throw in as an add-on, like in the case of Riverside and Descript. But I do have to, this is a bit of a tangent, I do have to wonder how well Castmagic is doing, because I saw, like within the last few months, they did a lifetime deal on AppSumo.
Yep.
Usually, when you've been around for a few years, the first thing I think is if you're going to AppSumo for a lifetime deal after you've been around for 4 or 5 years, that tells me that you're probably trying to infuse the company with some cash, because probably people are realizing I can get the same thing from ChatGPT.
Yep.
Just a guess.
Well, I can tell you how it's changed, because someone that I do some, I guess, pro bono work for has Castmagic and uses the repurposing from that. And while it began as a all-in-one solution, as many seats as you want for people who want to use the same account, use the same minutes, they then moved it away from that to a per user model. So you pay less for one person for the same things, but then every additional user that you add to a Castmagic account to access those minutes, it costs extra money per month. And I think it was something nominal, like $23 or something like that. But they've changed the interface again, and they've even added a direct chat tool within Castmagic, just like Riverside have as well with the co-creator, to prompt from material that you give to it. So I think, and particularly like the two of them are great examples because they've both clearly done this. Descript has done it for a while, but I think they're trying to recoup some of that user and customer base by giving people access to prompt the LLM semi-directly through a subscription they already have, so that they don't get tempted to get the pro plan with OpenAI and just ChatGPT, or get a Claude account, or use Perplexity, or whatever it might be. But in the end, what I think Castmagic has been doing is changing their model. They had a bunch of people exit, and yeah, they're back on AppSumo again, selling off those cheaper licenses just to try and get a bit of groundswell. And look, they might be looking at the end of the line, just trying to get a little bit of business before, fourth or fifth phase funding means that they become entirely redundant when OpenAI has all the functions that they can do for much cheaper, and all of a sudden they're out of the market. We're starting to look down the barrel of monopolies with AI companies, and there's a lot of third-party front-end AI companies that are going to start shuttering soon, with how expensive it's going to get, with how many users, their reputation, all that kind of stuff. Sorry about the sirens in the background if you can hear them. Yeah, I think the market, we're still pretty much in the bubble. I think we're probably 3/4 of the way through. And if the bubble is going to burst, I'd say we've got a couple more years left until maybe Riverside gets sold to Spotify, which someone suggested on social media recently, which I thought was really interesting. Castmagic disappears. ChatGPT does everything for everyone and is tapped into every single resource you can imagine, like being the Google of things, but it's AI. It's a really interesting time for AI related things. But yeah, the writing's on the wall with Castmagic. I think they're probably in dire financial straits, if not just looking to drum up a bit of extra user upswell. The other thing too is that if you cancel a Castmagic annual plan, and they will come back to you directly with an email saying, have it 50% off for the next year. No problem at all. Like code immediately. That's what happened to me when I cancelled out mine a little while ago. But yeah, it should be said, like you said, not diming out Castmagic. It's a tool that does its job. But yeah, the writing's on the wall there.
I think a lot of SaaSes are probably concerned about AI replacing them. But that's a whole other conversation. But let's get back to actual content repurposing. So we've got our podcast episode, we've got YouTube video, live stream, whatever. Now what? Okay, first we get the transcript. That's how all of those services work anyway. They're not magic. They're using the transcript just like we would in ChatGPT. But from there, we do what? We've got social media, we've got show notes. So let's do show notes. We've got shorts and reels. And we've got social posts. What else have you seen podcasters using their episodes for? Have you seen anything else?
Yeah, repurposing the content for newsletter drops would be a very popular one at the moment, I think. And on that note as well, I've seen a few creators talking about taking that content, maybe not as a per episode or per release basis, but the entirety of what they do, and creating a automated warm-up sequence for their product sale, like an email sequence or something like that. Excuse me. But yeah, email automation, I think, is one of those things where people are trying to utilize this content a little bit. And if you want to reference some stuff that I've seen, God, his name escapes me now. James Smith, who is a Brit who lives in Sydney, Australia. He's been doing a lot with his YouTube channel. I think I've talked about him before on the live streams. He's got a bit of a cohort-based thing where he teaches creators how to create good social media marketing. And some of it is landing pages and video intros and all that kind of stuff. One of them is like a 30-day to 60-day email warm-up sequence. And a lot of content repurposing goes into something like that as well. And if I don't mind saying, or if you don't mind me saying, I never mind saying it, but there's a little project that I do with a couple of people out of the UK as well, Rob Drummond and Peter Daly-Dixon. We do Activate Your Podcast, which is kind of flips this model on its head a little bit, where Rob Drummond, our conversation partner, will have a 90-minute conversation where they talk about anything and everything, and he will repurpose that 90-minute conversation into 5 pillar episodes of a podcast that we launch for that particular client. And I obviously get those transcripts that he puts together and cut the episodes into audio or video, whatever needs to be done. And so that's a different kind of repurposing too. Definitely not a self-promo there. I mean, you can head to activateyourpodcast.com if you're interested. But that is probably one of the more unique cases of repurposing that I've seen, but that isn't public. Like, we kind of do it internally as opposed to doing it the opposite of that, externally.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. And that's definitely something that is not going to be something most podcasts can do.
No, definitely not. And I mean, they can kind of simulate it for themselves if they wanted to, like just script and record 5 episodes. But in our setup for that, we have a human doing the AI bit just because he is so skilled. This is Rob Drummond. He is so skilled at story development and narrative development from conversations. He's a great question asker, and he's incredibly skilled at writing as well. So while he's just assembling and reassembling conversations himself here, he's, he writes a good podcast and email for himself as well. He's actually got a podcast if you're interested to find out a little bit more. He actually explains what I'm talking about here in a lot more detail. And his show is the Story Systems podcast. Audio only, I believe. But you can look up Rob Drummond on LinkedIn if you're curious to find out a little bit more. Sorry, this has turned into something completely different than what we're meant to be doing here. But I figured you might be a little bit interested because we haven't talked about it before.
Yeah, to me, that sounds like it's bordering on narrative podcasting.
Yeah.
That's really pre-production, really heavy on that, mapping out the content, recording it all in one take, and then piecing it together into the different episodes.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry.
Hey, no, that's why we do these things. A couple others I'm thinking. We've got blogs.
Definitely.
And if chances are, with a lot of stuff, we could actually turn it into not just shorts, but like mid-form content.
And you know what? There's a really interesting concept that, sorry to kind of tangentialize us just a tiny bit again.
That's what we do here.
Yeah, we got all this time. Why do we spend it just going tangents the whole time? So Jay Klaus, creator science podcast, and all of his other bits and pieces, YouTube channel. He's recently on his own show and on the Nathan Berry podcast, who is the founder or creator of ConvertKit, now Kit. He was talking a little bit about AI for education and how the traditional course is going to disappear. Like it's not going to be relevant anymore because of the hyper-personalized learning that LLMs and AI solutions offer. He goes into a little bit of detail around that. He's got a teaching background, or at least his parents were teachers, and he understands the pedagogical side of things, so I have to give him a bit of credit there. I still have bees in my bonnet about it. Not sure if I'll talk about it in my own podcast or not. But the most interesting part that emerged from that for me as a thought, and by the way, copyright TM, is that a traditional course, you imagine, will probably have video. It will have a textual component to it, in the case that you just need a quick summary of what's in the video, or you need some PDFs or written material, documents to download to supplement whatever that particular module is about. I think a really interesting component for repurposing that content into something that someone will be able to prompt in an LLM for themselves is to create a prompt with the information from that particular module in the course for the other person, the student, whoever, customer, to take away for themselves and then prompt and prod and play around with that material in their own LLM experience. Now, obviously, the first solution there is, what are you doing? You're giving them all the material. Why would they even need to engage with your course? And they'll just share all that content with their friends. You could create an AI-based solution like a GPT to be able to prompt for the learning material and sell access to that. That would also be an option. But I think with the prevalence of LLMs and the way people have their own choices for platforms and how they want to engage with it, I think providing the material in a way that gives an LLM a method for the student to query it in a copy-paste format, or even just an injectable format, whatever we have in future for LLMs, from educational material, allows them to create their own study solution with their own preferences. And that could be the next add-on product solution for LLM-based learning that is related to Jay Clous's particular theory on AI and education for online creators, not for students in schools, I should say. Now, that is way out there. Hopefully the explanation made sense. But that would also be repurposing into a prompt for then someone to run away with and then repurpose for their own needs, not for public consumption, but for their own consumption and learning. How does that sound to you, as someone who's written an online course at Tansiasta Academy?
I mean, I think that's the way it's going. You're going to be selling access to the knowledge. The knowledge is what has the value. The way it's presented is kind of beside the point, because everybody has their own way of learning. They have their own questions. That kind of a scenario allows people to very easily learn what it is they need to learn and be able to tell the AI, okay, here's where I am. Put together a learning path for me based on where I am. Starting with foundational stuff. If I don't know that, it can work that out. If you're coming in and you just need to learn a few things, you could just type in your questions. If you're someone who's, let's just use podcast editing as an example, you're completely new to it, you can get a customized course built up that teaches you all the foundational stuff, the language, the stuff like LUFs, why that's important, how to identify good edits versus bad edits, and then start teaching you how to edit, giving you feedback on your edits. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that you can't really do with current technology the way that you could with AI, because it can turn it into a much more interactive experience. The closest you could come is a more traditional classroom environment where you've got a one-on-one coach working with you, where you can ask your questions, they can customize everything. But traditional online courses just can't do that.
Yeah, and that's when the bees start buzzing in my bonnet. I start thinking, well, hang on, we're starting to shoehorn a technology to try and replace a look, people will start having their own bees to when I say this, but the traditional learning model with teachers that are humans who have again, being pattern matching humans, we can look at a classroom of kids and figure out where they are at and personalize their learning with our brains. We don't need a technology to do that. And I think that's still a huge divide where people talking about getting AI into schools are still talking about it from pure substitution because they're trying to avoid the conversation of teachers disappearing, but the technology is not there yet. I can't see an AI who can take prior knowledge, build a pedagogical path individualized for a classroom of students, infer the knowledge as well as the teacher would be able to, and build them for future learning with future topics in a way to construct them as a human being. I can't see the technology there yet. It may get there. It may be, AGI, general intelligence, that might be able to do that. But there's still room for the teacher in that model. And I think anyone who thinks that they can replace a teacher, a classroom teacher, with AI is going to fail. They are going to fail at this stage. That's when I start to look at Jay and I start to go, ooh, what are you saying? But he's obviously talking about, just like you did, in the context of online course creators. That's the market that's going to get hit by all these agents that are going to be able to answer questions and personalized learning a lot better. And I think it's handy, actually. It's really useful. But hanging up my teacher soapbox. AI learning, the repurposing of content to be able to allow students to prompt and personalize their own learning on top of what you give them. I think that's definitely going to be really handy in future.
It will. And tangent over.
You just bumped your mute button, buddy.
Thank you. Switching scenes. It happens. But if we look at this covers most of our stuff that we can repurpose from our content. If we look at it, show notes, YouTube descriptions, that's the only place I can really see being able to use AI kind of off the shelf, because we're using it more to describe what we discussed. I know
it's referential.
Exactly. And I know I still go through and clean up when it says, discover this. We take a deep dive into this. I can't put that out there. I'm sure I miss something here or there, but for the most part, I do go through, try to catch all of that stuff, tweak it. And that's one of you talked about this earlier, and you talked about it in that tangent. As of right now, whenever we're using AI, we definitely need to have a human QC it. And that's where a lot of this starts to come off as you either know what you're doing really well with your content, or you're just checking off a box and you don't care. If you're just checking off a box and putting it up as is, it's not helping you. You're just taking up space because no one's going to read it. Nobody's going to stop scrolling. So why are we even doing it? We need to put a little bit of effort into it to make sure it sounds like us, to make sure it's not full of all of the cliches. And trust me, I understand. It takes work to do that. It takes time. But again, that's where I keep going back to the value of doing this stuff yourself in your whatever LLM you prefer, because you have just so much more power. You can give it customized rules. And going into what you were talking about with LinkedIn and the patterns in the writing, that is definitely a thing. It's not enough to just go in and tell it to not use this list of words, because then you start finding, okay, it's not using these words, but it still sounds like AI. I'm picking up on these overused patterns. Last time we talked, I was talking about the automation I was building that was doing just this, repurposing content into different forms. I've spent a good amount of that time just reiterating time after time. Okay, here's the latest article. What needs to be fixed? Okay, we've chopped out all of these words, but it's still sounding like AI. Stuff like, it's not this, it's this. Each LLM has its own patterns that it uses. And in the process of reading articles and really pulling a bunch of content to feed into AI to go, okay, how do I get this to sound more human? Or I guess really, how do I make this sound less AI? It hit on what you said. It's not just a matter of not using specific words. It's the way that the LLMs are trained to write. It's very pattern based. It's very formulaic. So I've got this huge list of rules for kind of anti-AI filters to make sure it breaks things up. So we're not using certain structures, certain formats or formulas for putting together the sentences. And basically, another thing is AI is really big at making every point equal in size instead of having like one main point and then 2 or 3 supporting points. It just wants to give the main points. So there's a lot of strategy involved in getting the best out of things. And the more you put into instructing, putting custom instructions into your LLM, the less you're going to have to fight the outputs. And that's where I think a lot of us get so frustrated, is it gives us a good first draft, but we end up having to fight so much of it. We're still spending a ton of time repurposing our content. Maybe not so much on video, because that's it. You can't really change the video. What's said is said. The way it was said, that's the way it is. The only thing you can go in and tweak the colors for the titles or captions, whatever they call them, the font face, the size, how they animate on and off. But the actual content, there's not a whole lot you can do other than just edit it down.
Or selection. Picking the right spot in like podcast episodes. You got 60 minutes to play with potentially. It might have the wrong bit, so you need to reprompt it to pick another bit based on another topic selection and that kind of thing. But it is very basic.
Yeah, and I think that's the main takeaway I want people to have from this, is there's no right or wrong when it comes to what you're doing, but there are probably other ways you can be repurposing your content that you're not thinking about, like newsletters and email sequences. A big one, and this is rapidly changing with AI, but a lot of people ask, how do I get more people to find my show? It's not through RSS. People are going to find your show more easily through search, whether that's Google, YouTube, or just going to YouTube and finding it because it's suggested. I know there's a lot of, maybe not controversy or backlash, but a lot of old school podcasters, a lot of industry experts are still very down on video podcasting and YouTube as a podcast destination. But I think even if you are an audio-only podcaster, if you want to grow, you need to be on YouTube. That doesn't mean you need to have your full episodes on YouTube, but you need to be using YouTube in some way. Because if you're not on YouTube, you really are diminishing your ability to reach larger masses. And to a secondary degree, having a website with blogs. Not just, I see a lot of people just check off a box, okay, I'm going to throw my transcript up on my website. That's not going to help too much. You need to spend a little time to clean that up, turn it into an article that covers everything. Yeah, you also have the transcript for accessibility needs, but turning it into an article is going to be more helpful to more people. And I mean, we're in another transition with SEO, as a lot of search is being taken over by AI snippets, and we're now starting to see AI-powered browsers like Dia. Perplexity just came out with one. So a lot of things are changing there. But as of right now, having that content out there can't hurt you. It can only help.
Yep. And I was wondering how close you'd get to the next engine optimization revolution, which is going to be what I see a lot of people talking about now, AI optimized AI and engine optimization. And I think a lot of people are looking at that Gemini summary at the top of Google searches and going, how do I get in there? And how do I become the product that gets talked about as part of that summary when someone does a search? But also people looking and searching on ChatGPT as a function now, not using Google because they rely on ChatGPT more, or maybe it's because they pay for it. I don't know. But structuring your content, not just throwing the transcript, but like you've talked about before on other things, you have to structure that content in a way that makes sense, that the LLM who's spidering the material is getting the context from how you structure it. And like, you'll be able to talk to this more than I would, because I've just sort of become aware of it, and I'm going to start playing around with it myself with my new podcast. But having a FAQ or answered questions on your website that give enough detail that when ChatGPT is canvassing the internet, or enough people search on that website, that it has framed questions that it can answer when someone says, hey, what is the best, iPad case that I could possibly get? And someone goes, oh, it's this iPad case because this website says it's the best compared to all these other products. That kind of thing. AI optimized search is, I think, where a lot of the SEO discussion is going to start flying into, which may or may not do well. I'm not entirely sure. Have you seen a lot of that stuff? Because you were talking about it a little bit there, maybe not heavy-handedly like I referred to there, but have you started thinking about that as part of a strategy to repurpose your content into getting into people's prompted content out of LLMs?
Yeah, that's one of the other many iterations the articles have undergone. And that's structuring it to be more attractive to not just Google, but also LLMs, including FAQs on with each article, including kind of a summary, like a TLDR, quick summary with some bullet points of what's covered in the article. That helps the LLMs. But I think a lot of the main focus of SEO is going to still come into play with, I think I saw someplace calling it GEO, generated engine optimization. And I think it all comes down to authority building. That's where having that website with articles helps. That's where having the YouTube channel and videos helps. Show notes, they're not going to help you much. Social media, for the most part, is not going to help you much. But LinkedIn will. I know Instagram just became searchable in terms of like web search. Google, which also means LLMs, will be able to start scraping that data. But I know I've started seeing a huge increase in YouTube traffic from LLM searches, or I think it shows ChatGPT. I can't remember what it shows in the analytics, but I'm starting to see traffic generated from searches within LLMs. So it is happening. Like, I have a video about how to clean up dialogue in RX. It's an old video. I don't even use RX to clean that stuff up, but it's usually week after week my highest watched video, and it just skyrocketed out of the blue because it got picked up by ChatGPT. So when people are searching for that, it's one of the things that's linked as a reference. Right. So again, that's where that authority building really comes into play. And it doesn't matter if you're a content creator, if you're running a business, it's all starting to merge together where it really comes down to authority building if you want to really grow your audience base. Whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling a service, you're just podcasting and trying to reach a bigger audience, those lines are starting to blur pretty quickly because the way all of the machines, the robots are working together to provide us with what we're looking for, it has to determine who's trustworthy and who's not.
And I don't know, you'll put us on the train tracks again if this takes us off a little bit too far, but I think the approach that people take is the thing that's going to guide how you build this strategy. And while you haven't hammered it on the head, it's been very clear to me. You're talking about building authority. You're talking about building a content strategy. You're talking about the importance of the human in the process. All of these things are you working forwards and then selecting your... Also, sorry about helicopter there. I don't know what's going on outside. If you guys can hear that stuff, I'm very sorry. It's just all happening in Sligo at the moment. If you are working from your strategy outwards to find your tools and find the things that work, the methods, that's going to be where you find the most success, and the time that you put into the activities that you take is going to yield the most growth, or you'll learn the most about what works. Whereas so many people work backwards. They say, so you have ChatGPT. Here are 10 growth hacks that you can use for any content you create with ChatGPT to be able to blah, 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 10x, blah, blah, money, money. And then they work backwards, back to themselves, back to their strategy. And invariably, they're left with very little room to maneuver with how they want to create their marketing profile, create their brand, and build their authority, because they're stuck in all of these methods that a bunch of gurus have told them are going to work. We might be those gurus. I don't know. We're telling people to pull pickles off burgers. Maybe that can be the grain of salt that people walk away with. But if you start from internally building your persona, your brand voice, and then working outwards to the tools, as opposed to finding tools and having them solve the problems for you and work backwards back to where you are and what your voice is, I think that's going to set you up much better. And I wish I could say that very easily and quickly to all of the people who I interact with in podcasting forums who are talking about all these tools. There's even a few people on some of the other streams that I go on. Sorry, I'm not cheating on you there. I'm polyamorous in terms of who I stream with and talk about podcasting. But they talk about, oh man, I hit AppSumo the other week and they had this brand new AI generation tool for social media based for marketers and creating email generation. And I got it, like, wow, it did amazing things for me. But nowhere in that conversation did they say, and it helped me build my brand voice and it helped me build authority a lot better. I had a look at the content and it matched my strategy and my ideal client. They never use the language like that. It's just not popular in podcasting. And podcasting is the space that I operated in most, so obviously that's going to hit me the most. But I think what people should definitely, if nothing else, take away from this is it's that you don't start with the tools, you start with the strategy. Strategy has to be where you begin. Otherwise, you don't have room to move and you'll just end up disappointed in the end.
And that goes back to another thing I know we've talked about. I know I've talked to Tara about. And it's, you have to know what good looks like. If you don't know what that looks like or what it sounds like, you're reliant on the AI to be the smart one in the room. And that, as of right now, never ends well. We've all been there. We've all gotten into those arguments with LLMs where it's like, just do this thing I'm telling you to do, and it won't. At least that's what I've run into trying to wrangle things that might be kind of outside of my area of expertise, but I know enough to realize, no, you're getting off track. You're fixating on things that aren't the problem.
Yeah.
You aren't listening to me. And that's why humans still need to be involved. And the more we know about the area we're using the LLM, the AI in, the better the results we're going to get. I know Tara and I have talked about her starting to do some videos where she uses these brand-centric AI tools to really showcase, okay, this is what you get. You go to this place to get a brand done for you. It gives you a font or a couple of fonts, some brand colors, and a logo. But if you look into it, the logo is, you can choose from a bunch of basically licensed shapes. So basically you pick a shape, you pick a font, they slap your name in that font, on that shape. That's your logo. Well, you can't trademark that. And it's going to look a lot like someone else's logo. You don't want that either. You want your logo to be something that is unique, that you can trademark. And we can apply that to podcast editing. You look at the text-based editors. Yeah, they make things easy for the average person to edit their content. But anyone who listens to a bunch of podcasts, especially anybody who is an actual podcast editor, can listen to something done by an average person with Descript and hear all of the bad cuts. Whether that is a problem for the listener, that's going to depend on each individual. We all have our own baseline of what good enough quality is. And I'm of the mindset that I think most people are going to be forgiving of bad editing, so long as it's not so bad it becomes an annoyance, if the content is good. And I know there's a lot of editors who say, no, people aren't going to listen. Look at YouTube. Look at TikTok. All of the shorts. People are getting more accustomed to bad editing day by day. They watch so much content that has bad editing in terms of the audio. It's fewer and fewer people are going to be bothered by that. That's just the way it is. And it's going to come, there will come the time where, say, Descript or Riverside figure out how to get their AI to be better at not cutting into breaths, cutting into the ends or beginnings of words. Being able to alert you, hey, you probably shouldn't cut right here because the two words are not, you don't have a clean split point right here. It's going to sound bad if you cut between these two words. It will get there. And I mean, that's the thing with all of this technology. If you're someone who doesn't edit audio for a living, you might think what you get out of Descript sounds really good. It saves you money and you're happy with the result. That's why we're seeing so many less clients in that lower price range, because they'd rather save the money and do it themselves because they have more time than money.
I'm fighting myself as to whether I should say this, so I'm just going to say it because I think it's a brilliant business idea. Everything that you've described is the human. It's the human imprint on whatever we do. The way that you edit is going to be different to the way that I edit, which is going to be different to how the Riverside co-creator edits and the Descript Underlord edits and all those different things. There's like a personality. There's a profile that everybody has. Same with language. But that disconnect between the two areas that you described so eloquently when you said, I keep trying to prompt it to do this thing, to say the thing I want it to say, but it's not saying it. I don't know how to tell it not to say the thing and to say this instead. How do I tell it that? It's just not listening to me. It's not listening because you're not saying anything. And if you can bridge that divide between what someone doesn't know that they need to say to the LLM to capture their vocal profile or their brand persona or their personal persona for their reputation, for their authority, if you can capture that and like translate that into what an LLM will understand with perhaps a bunch of your filtering rules that tell it to exclude certain things based on certain elements of someone's profile, pump that as a prompt, or you pre-package it into a GPT kind of thing that you can then prompt and give material to then output. That sounds like a no-brainer at the moment. If you have the capacity, and this is where it's gonna be really hard to execute. People might be listening to this right now, whether they're on the stream or whether they're replaying it. They might be going, that sounds like a great business idea. I want to do that. But here's the rub. You can't be a tech-only person, because if you understand LLMs, you're not necessarily going to understand the human condition, the way that people are or programmed across their entire life's experience to say things the way that they do. The same if you're a human who can understand the way people speak, the way their brand voice is, and put it together, you're likely not going to be an expert LLM programmer or prompt engineer to be advanced enough to create that profile. So if you are someone who can do both, that is a very unique business opportunity that is not going to last forever, and you should definitely take advantage of it. But if it's not you, perhaps you work together with someone else to make it happen. But that's the connective tissue. Sorry, that's the connective tissue between the two things. I'm going to be smacking the microphone all the time. I'll take it away from my mouth. If you can connect those two things together, that people do incredibly poorly, to be able to do what you're doing, Jesse, with all the rules that you create that you've used to take over time, but you've even admitted you don't know what good looks like coming out of the LLM because it's not your subject area, and yet you've taken big strides to make sure that that repurposed content is as close to what would be your voice as possible. If there was a way to brand and package that product as a service that people can get once off to then get into their LLM, to then structure their content well, I think that would be very cool. Again, I think this is the tangents episode, but yeah, what do you think about that? Does that sound like somewhere like that there's that gap that we're trying to address with our discussion today?
Not at all. It's not like
okay.
That's what Tara and I are doing with our other business. We are actually doing what you just said. I'm the technical person. She's the writer. So we pair really well. She can go through, read the stuff, go, okay, all of this needs to be improved. So we are doing what you just said. We offer that to businesses to be able to take your writing, even if you don't have a body of writing, she can work with you to figure out what your voice is. And then me and her work together to create custom GPTs or gems or whatever that put all of those rules, all of that into place so that your employees, yourself, your team, whoever is doing the writing, they have that available to them. She did that for one of her clients that she was working with as a contractor. They hated the writing of basically everybody but her that they've ever worked with. And she did not have the time to do all of this copywriting, or at least doing it from scratch. So she put together a gem in Google because they're heavily in the Google Workspace environment, that took all of that and they just started using that, and well, we're happy with the results we're getting. So
Okay.
that helped take a lot of work off her plate so she could focus more on strategy and less on writing, because then the owner could just use the gem to do all of the writing for him. And that's where that power really comes in of, yeah, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of skill, not just on one side, not just the tech side, but also on the writing side, to be able to really nail that, really be able to customize it, to deliver the results that the client is looking for each and every time. And we offer that's one of the things we offer businesses. So yeah, it's a very good idea.
Yeah, so completely ignoring the fact that I clearly don't understand exactly what you guys do. This is probably the most meandering product placement we could ever get for your business on a live stream that may be something dissimilar. So do you want to tell people that might be watching now how they can approach you guys about how you can do it for them?
You can reach us. You can reach out to me at tansiasteracademy.com. Also, Tara and I, where we're building the new website for the AI stuff, is bbremix.com or brandonbusinessremix.com. They both take you to the same place. We're in the middle of building a new website for that, our rebranded business. And that's what we do. We help companies with branding, but more, our main focus is on the AI. Helping companies, helping freelancers, individuals, kind of across the board. Everything from teaching you how to use LLMs and the AI to get better at it, to customize solutions like GPTs, custom GPTs that will write in your brand voice, to just completely automated workflows that will take your transcript, write you articles, write you social media posts, newsletter snippets, and lead magnets. That's what I'm working on now. And yeah, we can do customized solutions for just about anything you're looking for. That's what we do. It's hard to describe because there's a lot there, but we can help you learn and integrate AI into your workflows. We can help you decide the best tools to use. Anything related to that, we can help you, whether it's as a consultant, a coach, or helping you with the actual implementations.
So when you come back to this live stream and you start repurposing the content, maybe we make it into the marketing material a little bit, because that's exactly what we've been talking about today, right?
It is. It's weird how all of this kind of came around full circle.
Yeah. And I unwittingly told you what product you should make, and you're making it.
Yeah. So yes, we've thought about that. That's a very smart idea, because for a lot of people, AI is still a really new thing, and it's overwhelming to learn, especially if you're trying to run a business. There's a lot of things to learn, and frankly, a lot of businesses, a lot of freelancers, they don't have the time to devote to really learning this. But the realities are, at some point in the near future, we need to be using it, or we're not going to be able to compete on price with other people. We're going to be working harder on every single job because we don't know how to use the tools available to us to work more efficiently, work smarter, find those areas where we can save time by using these tools.
So, realizing we're probably starting to approach the end of the stream, and we've talked about the different ways that you can repurpose content from AI. We talked about all the bees in my bonnet about different things and making burgers and sandwiches. And considering you're the expert, what would you say to the person who's just watched this and said, okay, this is how we get on board, and I haven't caught any of the BB remix streams that you do on the other day of the week yet? What should they do to get started with doing better at content repurposing with what they have available to them?
The first thing, just pick a tool. It's like anything else. There's a lot of options out there, but to get good at something, you need to stick with it. So, for instance, pick one LLM. That's going to be the one you learn, whether that's ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or Claude. Pick one of those three. Claude is going to be the best at natural sounding writing. So for a lot of the things we're talking about, it might be a good choice. But at the same time, I think ChatGPT and Gemini are more flexible. They can do a lot more. So I would probably lean towards one of those two to start with. And then learn how to prompt. That is the most important thing. You need to be able to be very clear in what you want. You can't just say, write me an article. That's not helpful. You need to tell it all sorts of things, and you may not know what to tell it. So in the prompt, you tell it to ask any clarifying questions you need before you do this. Another tip you can do is to get a better prompt is to use the LLM to tell you what a better prompt is. So instead of saying, write me an article, you say, I need you to help me write a prompt that will write an article that's going to help me with SEO SEO. See, now that I'm on the spot, I'm drawing a blank.
Trying to rank better on Google or something.
Yeah. Write me a prompt that will help me write an article that will help me build my reputation for SEO purposes. What are the best practices for that? And ask me any clarifying questions. It'll probably ask you, what's your website? Who's your audience? What topic do you want to write about? So it's going to ask you the questions that you aren't even thinking about because you're not a professional SEO optimized blog writer. So it's going to ask you these questions, and then it'll write you up a prompt. You just copy and paste that, or just continue the conversation and tell it, okay, using that prompt, write me an article based on the answers I gave you. And that should give you a much better result than write me an article from this transcript, or write me just anything vague. I think that's the biggest thing. Pick one tool to really work with day in and day out, and learn how to get better at prompting. Whether that's learning, the LLMs are getting a lot better at using natural language. So I don't know how important some of the frameworks that have been floating around for years, how important those are these days. I've seen some people starting to say you don't really need these complicated prompts anymore. I haven't tested that out yet, but yeah, try it out. If you're not getting the results you want with natural language, go to the next step of asking the AI to write you a better prompt. And that's the thing. All of these things, it's a learning process. Things are changing quickly. And just because what didn't work today, it doesn't mean it won't work tomorrow, because the technology, the LLMs just keep improving at a really quick pace.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my best thing. Start simple, one tool, get good at using it. If you need to, ask questions about how to get better at prompting. It will help you every step of the way. It being the LLM.
Yeah. Well, it's the only way. Like, you can't learn to swim without swimming in water.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'd add to that, just as a practical tip for people who are looking to do what you're talking about, the value of having a notepad file or like a Word file next to you whenever you're going through learning how to prompt, or you think of something when you're in the middle of prompting the LLM for something and you ask it something different than you've ever asked it before and it works, copy and paste that and store it somewhere. Like, keep it in a place that you can reflect on later and go, okay, so for every prompt in future from now, I should include an answer or a response to this question or this statement to further refine what I want, because it gave me what I needed. I think a lot of people get stuck into the chat version, the chat kind of setup of ChatGPT at least, and they figure, oh, it's stored in the chat, I'll just go grab it later. But it's actually invariably really hard to get to depending on how long you chat. And if you want to reflect on that particular question or statement outside of ChatGPT to be able to problem solve for what you're trying to output, and this is a very granular kind of practical tip, but writing things down, storing them, having a look at them later when you're building future prompts, that kind of thing kind of really helped me to figure it out.
Well, and I think that's good advice in general, because especially if you find yourself doing the same things with ChatGPT, like if you're repurposing content, you're going to be asking it to do the same things over and over. Write down that prompt so you can copy and paste it, so you're not doing it from scratch each time.
Yeah, and hack the process. Like, even reverse engineer from a post that you ended up with that you liked and say, hey, have a look at this post. How would you write a prompt to arrive at that fast enough? And then see what it outputs and see if you can use that instead. Like, there's lots of ways you can forward and backwards through the LLM to learn a bit better how it's going to give you the result you want.
Yeah, and another example similar to that is you have it write your article, you go through, you make all of your changes and say, okay, you wrote this. This is what I ended up editing it to be. How can I prompt you to give me this result instead of what you originally gave me? And that reverse engineering of prompts can be very, very useful. Once you get the result, you ask it, okay, now that we've gotten to this point, what prompt should I give you in the future that will get us here right away?
Yep. And it feels like you're circumventing the technology to do that, but it's such a flexible tool. It's built to do these things for you. It can do far more than you think it could possibly do. Start to push the boundaries and do these extra things and make it do even more work for you than you could have thought.
Yeah. It's like anything else. You have to get in there and start using it. Start with the basics. As you get more familiar with it, you start seeing those cliches pop up. As you start understanding how you can use it. As you get more experienced, then you can take what you've learned and start to create custom instructions that are going to help it with every conversation you get. If you use it for writing, you can give it samples of your writing. So in the future, it sounds more like you. And as you get even more experience, you start going, okay, you know what? I use it to write articles all the time for my podcasts. Let's create a custom GPT that's going to save me a whole lot of time so I don't have to prompt it each time. but we don't want to start into the more advanced stuff right away. You want to get that foundational experience and then build upon that. And I speak from experience because the whole content repurposing thing was basically my first big project, and everything from here on out is going to be much simpler because I decided to take on one of the more complex automation type projects as my first one. It's allowed me to learn, but it's not the best first project to take on. I mean, I guess granted, I've been doing automation, basic automations for years. So I guess I have some familiarity with that already. But I wouldn't advise trying to create a content repurposing machine from day one. Get familiar with what you want to do. Figure out, because the most important thing is you get into more advanced stuff, is being able to know how you want to do it. Breaking stuff down into each step. Not, okay, I have a transcript, then I write an article. No, you've got a transcript. Then you want to figure out what your article's about. Then you need to do some SEO research. Then you need to outline the article. Well, before you outline, you'll outline it. Then you want to go back into the article to pull out relevant quotes. They're going to support stuff. And then you write the article. And then you need to edit the article. You need to pull in external research so that it's not just an article pulled from your transcript, but you're creating a more valuable, in terms of SEO and probably AI search, by linking to external sources. You become a more valued source yourself. You're providing statistics, quotes from outsiders, industry experts. You're creating a more high value article. And then once you're done with all of that, you edit, you create prompts for images to use with the post, all of the metadata, then you upload it somewhere where you can have the human QC all of this. So having a really clear understanding of every step of the process. And the more you understand, start to look at things as a process, you'll get better at prompting, because you'll, instead of trying to have the LLM do all of the things in one step, in one prompt, you're going to break it down into steps. Because it's like anybody. We've talked about the new intern analogy with LLMs. If you hire a new intern and you just drop a ton of knowledge on them and say, okay, now go write an article, it's going to be really overwhelming for them. Break it down into steps so it can focus on one thing at a time. You'll get much better results.
Yeah. And that applies to the person who's already doing stuff too. Like if we've been adequately convinced that Castmagic isn't the product for you, but you're currently using it, and you'd like to approach how Castmagic is creating the subpar material for you at the moment, and how you can do it better in something else, but you already have a workflow and a content lifecycle that you need to keep up. All those steps that Jesse just talked about, you break them down and address them one at a time, and unpack them and unpick them and test out things and do them in little parts. Like your big content engine, Jesse, not everyone has to do that. If it takes like 20, 30 hours to just get the engine going, and then you can start doing stuff. Instead, perhaps like myself, who used Castmagic for a while, had it on my to-do list to learn how to prompt LLMs. Wait until you got a bit of, breathing room for some professional development. Get a ChatGPT subscription, start prompting for the things that you got and playing around with it, and start addressing pieces of your chain. What is the best prompt for the show notes? Best prompt for the title? How do you create a custom GPT instructions for a project in ChatGPT to capture what that brand profile is? Expand and then make efficient in your understanding each little bit of your process over time. And that will become better, easier, and you'll learn a whole lot more as well. Better than like setting yourself a weekend to do what Jesse took however long it took for you to do, you know?
I think that's well said. I think that's a good high point to end things on. But I do want to give you a minute to talk about your newly relaunched podcast.
Thank you. Well, it's a brand new one. It's relaunched in the sense that I've been trying to find what the ideal podcasting podcast is for me. And after a bit of introspection, some reflection, and a bunch of podcast episodes with Donald Robertson talking about his book, How to Think Like Socrates, my new podcast, Rethinking Podcasting, is taking an approach to the podcast industry and to support podcasters by giving them the ability to think about podcasting differently, but not in the sense that you're going to be creating specialized show notes that you can think a little bit more about that will be better SEO optimized. Like, this isn't a growth hacks podcast. This is a podcast that's focused on you as the podcaster, how you can better yourself, how you can focus on your production, how you approach your show, and how you approach the podcasting world and integrate all of these aspects that are very much you, your methodology with interacting with the world, and creating a philosophy with how you approach podcasting. Because too much of podcasting now is, what microphone do I need? How often do I need to release my episode? What's the perfect day? Again, like I talked about earlier, that's picking the thing and working backwards into yourself. Rethinking podcasting is about thinking about the podcasting industry from yourself outwards, and then bringing it back to how you can interact and think about the podcasting world. And a lot of the approach that I take is inspired by what I've done with philosophy in my background. I studied it in high school. I've got a Bachelor of Arts undergraduate degree in philosophy as well. And I wouldn't have realized it at the time, but even in my career in tech and support and customer service, the way that I have been engaging in my career and doing the things I do in the jobs that I have, having an understanding of philosophy in general really helps. But in particular, Socrates and his way of questioning to narrow down to the truth through the Socratic method has been incredibly valuable for me, and I know it'll be valuable for everyone else as well. So the first episode came out last week. There's going to be 5 episodes over the next 2 weeks that will give you a bit of background on me and how this podcast came about. But it'd be great if you're a podcaster and you're interested in following along on the journey. You can head to rethinkingpodcasting.com to find out more and subscribe. And there are ways to contact me there as well. I'd be really interested to hear what you think if you're a podcaster.
Sounds good. I know you've put a lot of time and effort into thinking about this new approach, this new show, and I'm glad you finally have it out in the wild.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm really proud of it too. And I'm hoping it's going to connect with some people. I have no aspirations for it being like a Joe Rogan beta kind of show, but the people who do listen, I hope it connects with them and that it makes their experience of podcasting a little bit better. That's my true goal, helping podcasters flourish.
And that's what both of us are about, trying to help however we can. We know we're not going to hit the masses, but if we help one person, I feel I've done my job. If I can help 10 or 15, I've done even better.
That's the way.
Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jesse. Bye-bye.
Bye.